We operate under a deeply ingrained assumption about physical reality, that events follow an objective, unbroken chain of cause and effect. But when you strip away our conditioning, the foundation of human rationality reveals itself to be a biological illusion. In the 18th century, the Scottish philosopher David Hume set out to dissect human nature. He relied strictly on empirical observation, discarding centuries of religious and rationalist assumptions about how the mind works. To do this, he created a rigid analytical framework known as Hume's fork. Hume's fork is a categorical distinction dividing all human inquiry into two exclusive domains: mathematical truths, known as relations of ideas, and empirical observations about the physical world, known as matters of fact. Mathematical truths are guaranteed by logic. Matters of fact, however, rely entirely on one specific, unquestioned mechanism to connect them: the relationship between cause and effect. If the mechanism of cause and effect is logically flawed, the entire bedrock of empirical science, predictive models, and daily human knowledge collapses into mere assumption. Let us look to the physical world to rigorously test the validity of cause and effect through pure observation. Look past the environment of the room. Bring your attention all the way down to the microscopic level of the felt. Watch the sequence of events closely as one object approaches another. Do not blink at the exact moment of impact. We see event A, the first ball moving across the table. Then we see event B, the second ball moving away. Now try to locate the actual physical transfer of force between these two objects. You will find an epistemological gap. We observe spatial contiguity, and we observe temporal succession, but we never observe the connecting power itself. Because this necessary connection cannot be seen, felt, or measured by any instrument, it is not a valid empirical data point. It is physically missing from reality. Instead of logic, our expectations are driven by custom or habit. Custom is the natural, non-rational propensity of the mind to expect a particular outcome after repeated exposure to a sequence of events. Reason does not deduce causality. It merely rationalizes the biological conditioning that habit has instilled in us over time. The force we believe we see is an hallucination generated by our nervous system to navigate a chaotic universe. Our intellect is a slave to our biology. This exact same problem scales upward from the microscopic collision of billiard balls to the cosmic mechanics of planetary motion. Consider the ultimate question of inductive reasoning. On what demonstrable basis do we believe the sun will rise tomorrow? To prove something a priori means demonstrating that its opposite implies a literal logical contradiction. There is no mathematical or logical contradiction in conceiving a universe where the sun suddenly stops rising tomorrow morning. We can picture it perfectly. We assume tomorrow will happen because of the uniformity principle. The uniformity principle is the unstated foundational belief that the future will inherently resemble the past. Every predictive science, from the field of astrophysics to global economics, relies entirely on this principle being true. Since the uniformity principle cannot be proven by deductive logic, our absolute certainty about tomorrow rests on blind faith, not rational deduction.
Try to justify the uniformity principle using empirical evidence rather than deductive logic. This is a diagram of the standard scientific defense. We trust the future will be like the past because, in our prior experience, the future has always eventually looked like the past. The fatal flaw in this defense is that it uses past experience to prove that we can rely on past experience. Right here, the logic forms a closed loop, collapsing under its own weight. Any attempt to rationally prove the laws of nature using past observation is viciously circular. It proves absolutely nothing. The physical world presents a total disconnect between the superficial sensory properties of an object and its hidden capabilities. Isolate the raw sensory impressions of this fire, the visual color of the flames, the geometry of the iron grate. These immediate visual impressions contain zero information about the fire's secret powers, its capacity to burn, consume, or destroy. A highly intelligent person encountering fire for the exact first time would have no logical way to deduce its destructive power simply by looking at it. Knowledge of this secret power emerges only through constant conjunction. Constant conjunction is the repeated experience of one event immediately followed by another, such as seeing fire and then feeling heat. Nature provides no structural guarantees that similar appearances will yield similar effects. Our survival relies entirely on the precarious conditioning of past exposure rather than objective knowledge of the world's gears. Let us return to the micro level to finalize this autopsy of human perception and break the illusion completely. Hume formulated a rule known as the copy principle. The copy principle dictates that every genuine idea in the human mind must be a direct copy of a prior sensory impression. Apply this principle to the concept of necessary connection. We have no sensory impression of a physical link in the gap between the balls. So where does the idea of causality come from? The impression comes from within. The repeated observation of the sequence creates a visceral feeling of anticipation inside the observer's mind. The mind projects this internal feeling of anticipation onto the external objects, mistaking a psychological reflex for a physical law of the universe. Causation does not exist in the physical universe. It is exclusively a phenomenological construct generated by the human brain to prevent paralysis. We must confront the terrifying implications of navigating a universe utterly devoid of objective, provable causal links. We survive only because of a pre-established harmony. Pre-established harmony is the fortunate coincidence where our irrational, habit-driven customs align with the actual course of nature just enough to keep the species alive.